can you tell us as the progress or impact that this election situation room seems to have had on Liberia elections?
Well, I think first of all is to acknowledge that WANEP is not the only organization that worked to see to a peaceful and credible election in Liberia, but we made a contribution. And part of what we did was that prior to the elections, we deployed our monitors to gather information regarding the threats to peaceful election. And based on those information, we were able to do a policy brief. The policy brief was focusing on opportunities and challenges for the Liberian democracy. And that policy brief was made available to policymakers, including our intergovernmental organizations, ECOWAS and African Union. On the basis of that, we also conducted a hot spot mapping that now clearly identified for us what we consider to be risk areas. And our deployment of monitors and observers followed the pattern of those hotspot areas. As you can see, this is an election that is different from the previous elections in Liberia in many ways. Number one is that this is the first time that the Liberian security apparatus and system and architecture is 100% handling the elections post the unmill in Liberia. The second thing is that this is also an election where the incumbent is contesting. So it's unlike the last election where the incumbent was already on her way out. But also that there was an increase in the number of voters. And we are enthusiastic in many ways. Number one is that with all the skirmishes, we can say that the Liberian security agents were able to manage this election to a very good extent. The second thing is that the enthusiasm amongst the Liberian citizens, especially the younger ones, to cast their votes is good for the democratic ethos in Liberia, and that is something to be encouraged. The third thing is that so far, we can see some high level of patriotism amongst political parties, amongst citizens, and also amongst the state institutions. And for us, we can only hope that it continues that way. So to that extent, we will say that we have made our contribution together with other civil society actors, and that we can have what we can call, as it is today, a fair election.
Thank you so much. Mr. Ezef, still around the question. What can you tell us of the relevance of the election situation room for these elections and future elections to come?
I think what is generally now accepted is that we can no longer leave elections in the hands of politicians alone, and therefore civil society actors and citizens must provide a direction with regards to how our democracy should function. So to that extent, I think it is important that whichever result we have chalked through this system, that we begin to deepen them. Number one is to have a citizens that is aware of their rights and civic responsibilities. Number two is that we must have a citizens that is also ready to contribute to the deepening of democratic ethos. And of course, finally, and for me more importantly, is that the more politicians understand that citizens are watching whatever they are doing, the more we increase the participation in political processes, but also the more we also provide some level of credibility and confidence in the system. And for me, I think we can only say that as an institution, as WANEP, that our early warning system is not just about the election. Post this election, we also continue to monitor the practice of democracy and the provision of good governance across the sub-region. And for me, that's the only way we can hold politicians accountable and hold public officers accountable, since they are acting on the basis of the mandate we have given them.
So, having said a lot about this unique initiative, still from Tower TV, we would love to know, with this initiative that WANEP has given to us, the Liberian people, to carry out a peaceful election, what are your dissatisfaction or impression?
Well, I won't say dissatisfaction. I would rather say where are the lessons and what needs to improve. And a great philosopher said that the biggest room on earth is the room for improvement. You know, so we've mentioned a couple of them. Number one is that I think there should be increased collaboration between the National Electoral Commission, the media, the civil society actors, so that we can deepen political awareness and democracy awareness at the community level, including, of course, issues around electoral practices, what needs to be done and what does not need to be done. You know, some people wear campaign materials to voting stations because they are not aware, not because they don't want to obey the law, and or because that's the only clothes they feel they can put on to show their solidarity with their party. So these are little things that we need to continue to work on. Secondly, I think that also that has been observed is that perhaps led through the National Assembly need to look at the period of the election. A lot of people were scared about the weather and how people can vote, assuming flooding occurred or other natural disasters associated with rain, that it may have affected the turnout of this election, or at least created some logistical challenges. So that's another area. Another area also for me is that we need to make it obvious to all citizens about how they can vote and how we can reduce crowd in the voting stations. These are all things that we observed across the counties in Liberia, and I think that for me, these are the kind of things that I feel that the electoral umpire, the other state institutions, including the security agents and the media, must take in as a collective to see how they can improve on the process.
Thank you. So to give, this is my last question from Thomas, so that other people can have the chance to think. So, as a key factor of initiating such a great platform to help us, what can you say about this whole process? Did that really meet the requirements of what you were expecting?
I think that's more like me setting the example for myself and also marking the paper. You know, so I will allow that judgment to come from the Liberian citizens. As far as we are concerned, we have focused on the procedure and the processes in line with the project document we submitted to our partners. To us, we feel that we have gotten the collaboration of the Liberian citizens to provide their services, to volunteer their services, both as election observers, both as data gatherers, both as analysts, and also communication experts. But more importantly, that we were able to sit down with eminent persons to make critical decisions at very critical moments. So for us, that is gratifying. It means that what we came to do is to support. The leadership of this ESR was entirely in the hands of Liberians, and they have shown their commitment and their patriotism. And for us, as an institution, we are satisfied. So in terms of the impact of that, I think only time will tell. But for us, posterity will judge us that we have done what we're supposed to be. And we are happy with the collaboration and cooperation of the Liberian citizens.
Yeah, I got one question. What makes this situation more unique as compared to past situations like you control one of the graduate? Was there additional value added to your operation?
No, so number one is that we don't operate election day situation. So over a period of time, we have followed key critical indicators, including the registration process leading up to the election. Because our belief is that the election does not happen just on election day. So it is an electoral process. That means it takes a number of processes. And those processes for us is as important as the election day. So because we are not an international observer, we are also part and parcel of the Liberian community because we have an office in Liberia. So over a period of time, our monitors have been monitoring the trends leading up to this election. And that was what informed the first policy brief that we issued. So somehow, we are aware of where to deploy our resources and where to ask people to look out for. So that's number one thing that is unique. Number two is that we are not involved in result tabulation, we are not involved in process management, because that's not our core area. We are looking at where there could be infractions that could lead to breach of peace during the electoral process. And the good news also with us is that because we are also the official partner of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, and also providing resource to African Union, we can interface with them in critical moments to provide preventive diplomacy. So we leverage on our partnership with African Union, the UN system, and ECOWAS to provide this kind of influence on political actors to play by the rules. And therefore, for us, while you're doing the data gathering in this room, where it is leading us to, in terms of the response, is higher than here. And we are able to provide that bridge between the citizens and this other international community that provide the kind of response through the preventive diplomacy that ensures that issues are addressed at the need.
Thank you very much for hosting AED, and we want to say thank you too for coming. Thank you, Honorable ED, for answering my questions. Ladies and gentlemen, please, thank you.
And thank you for listening.